we're talking with Laurie Mann. She's the co-owner of American BioChar Company. It's a company that's been manufacturing biochar blends for more than 7 years. Laurie has a master's of science studies, and she taught high school chemistry and biology for more than a decade. Today, she's helping companies and practitioners improve soil quality to improve the health of the plants that are growing in it. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you, Monica. Hi.
So we're really excited to have you here to talk about something that a lot of people don't know much about. So many people have heard the term biochar, but may not know what it is. I mean, I know when I first heard it, I thought of charcoal briquettes. I don't think that's what this is, right? So can you tell us, what is biochar? What's it made of? How do they make it? How is it different than charcoal?
Well, that's really a good analysis on that. Most people think of it as charcoal and charcoal briquettes and things like that. It is not the same thing. There's a relationship to it. But what happens is biochar is produced through a process called pyrolysis. And pyrolysis is very similar to combustion, but it's a higher temperature and there's practically no oxygen. Where combustion needs the oxygen is actually removed and it kind of rushes through the organic matter and leaves behind only pretty much just this carbonized material. And because we use southern yellow pine, we're very specific with what we call feedstock. That's what goes in to make the biochar. We use southern yellow pine. And what it does is that pyrolysis burns off everything, including the volatile organics, and leaves behind only the lignin skeleton of the tree. And if you visualize all those vessels in a tree, it's very, very porous, and we can crush that down into smaller parts. And then that's just the biochar. It's basically the carbon skeleton of a tree. The porosity of our biochar is very good because of the feedstock, because of how we do it. And in fact, a 6-gallon container of the biochar by itself actually represents over 550 acres of surface area, which means that's area that biology and water can be held in, and food and air and everything else. So you can increase the surface area in just a small little area around a tree by using the biochar.
Biochar itself, those little pieces of it,
holes within it,
that if you were to look at the surface area on all of those little pieces,
you spread it all out,
that's where you get the 550 acres.
Yeah. We've been able to do a testing on that to verify that amount. And some biochars have that amount and many do not. But we've been able to use a certified test to show that amount of biochar space. Yeah.
So that is unique to southern white pine or yellow pine?
I believe so because we can clean it out. If you cannot clean out the biochar, the organic compound being used, burned, then you're not going to have that kind. It's going to be filled in with what was originally there.
Okay, so you've got this black stuff, and you've crunched it down into little pieces. Now, what do you do with it, and why? What does it do for you?
Why is a good question, actually. The first thing you do is you want to get it into the ground. It doesn't have to be deep in the ground. A lot of people will just put it over the top and then it works itself into the soil. A lot of people work it with soil, mix it with soil and put it in there, like a follow-up to planting a tree. And a lot of others, what we have is a liquid that we also can do, and it can work itself into the soil. I'll talk about that later if that's okay. It's a good product. But no matter what, we're getting it into the soil. Why are we doing that? Because we have so many different kinds of soils that plants are trying to live in and grow in. Real heavy clay soils or extremely sandy soils. Those two have their own pros and cons. But one of the things, clay always has a problem with water percolating through because they're so compact. And in sand allows everything to go through, so it can't hold organic matter very well. So it's this improving the structure of the soil that biochar really does a good job of. With that, and medium type mixes of soils do well as well. You get that in there and you're creating a change and improvement in the structure of the soil. Monica, biochar can take over 800 years to break down. It's not going to be gone. You know how like mulch and things like that, compost, you come back the next year, you come back later that same year, it's gone. This is going to be here. It's going to be here for way beyond our lifetime and our children's lifetime. And most importantly, it's going to support the growth of soil biology that we really are lacking in many of our soils, in the urban trees, as well as in agriculture, the whole gamut. When putting biochar into the soil, you're going to immediately see up to 30% increase in water holding capacity. Not just water holding capacity, but also a reduction in compaction and water percolation through the soil. But that's not the most important part of what you're ending up doing. What you're ending up doing is you're going to be increasing that soil biology. And it's the soil biology in that area around the roots, that rhizosphere, that actually is going to hold water better and allow water to percolate through and reduce compaction. So it's only the starting point. The soil biology, such as the bacteria, they create a biofilm that is kind of sticky and helps the soil kind of aggregate. And by aggregation, that allows the water to flow through the soil, but it also holds water. The fungi will increase, and fungi create what's called glomalin. And glomalin, too, will increase holding capacity. So of water, I should say, around the root system. So although we start with the biochar, it's not the biochar that's actually doing most of that water holding capacity or air compaction, etc. It's actually that increasing support of the biology around the root hairs.
So it's kind of creating the environment for the biology to thrive.
That's perfect.
Biochar itself then it's inert. There's no innate biology.
Nobody's eating it or anything like that. It's not biochar. That's a good point too, because I have to explain that to people sometimes. It is not plant food. It doesn't feed the plant. It doesn't feed the biology. What it does is it supports it all around.
Given all the good things that biochar can do, if you look at a tree service company that's offering plant health care in some form, how would they incorporate biochar into their services? And why?
Well,
why would they do it?
First of all, the way an arborist company should look at it is that they're going to be taking what they're already doing and they're going to up its ability and its effectiveness. And what I mean by that is this: when we have put in different types of nutrients and or fertilizers, when we have that kind of a program, a lot of times the actual volume that's put in to the soil is higher than is necessary, because the whole point is a lot of that fertilizer that might be easy to mix with water will also move through the soil and get past the root hairs and leach away. So one of the neat things about the biochar is it's going to hold that there and hold a lot of that there. So one of the things we tell people is they can reduce their fertilizing or a nutrient program by 50%. Now, a lot of them, that's a lot. So we suggest, okay, fine, reduce it by 25%, reduce it by 10. But the bottom line is this: you're not going to need as much and get more out of it, mostly because of two things. And I'm going to keep coming back to this. One, you're going to reduce that leaching, but also, Monica, we're increasing that soil biology health, and the soil biology is going to be able to utilize a lot of what's being put into the soil around trees and then effectively get that to the tree. You know, side note, breathing, side note, we feed trees, agriculture, and turf lots and lots of fertilizer. And you know, it's going to start getting real expensive in the near future. The reason we do that is because we don't have the kind of soil health, soil balance that we should have. Therefore, we have to feed a plant a lot more direct. It's like baby feeding. It's like, a liquid diet. Whereas if more organic material was in there and the biology was working at the point it should be, that's their entire job. Their job is to take material and present it to the plant, to the tree, to those roots in the form that is best for that tree. We are actually helping that tree utilize what the arborist is putting into the soil. We don't need as much. And so there might even be a more effective response to what they've been doing, but less by incorporating the biochar blend. You don't want to put biochar in all by itself on a turf or around. You need to blend it. What we call that, the actual term is charging the biochar. By charging or blending the biochar, you end up filling up some of the little holes there, because it's like if you were to dig a hole and it rained, where would most of the water go? They would fill in that little hole. A lot of the nutrients that already are in the soil, if you put in biochar all by itself, and it's a good quality biochar with lots of porosity, it's going to first pull nutrients from the soil or the plant. You can actually see a yellowing, a chlorotic effect in like lawns when you throw just biochar on there. So what do? We're biochar blenders. You had caught that, I had said that earlier on. And we blend ours with Humate, which is bioavailable, immediately decomposed plant and animal material from when we had oceans in the United States. And then they moved out, and we pull that and we mix it together, very decomposed. But you can do that with compost tea. You can do that with manures or even fertilizers, or a mix of nutrients you have, kind of different things like compost even, or just a really good soil. You can just mix those up together. I give it a little bit of time, but no matter what, you don't want to put a good biochar into your soils or on top of your turf without blending it with something. Then it just goes like gangbusters.
So that's the key then. Blending
Yes,
it
I
with
believe so.
something that's going to provide nutrients for the plants
And the
biochar would otherwise sort of, let's say,
initially.
suck up initially.
Yeah, initially. Yeah. And then, after a year or two, but who wants to wait that long before that? It'll start giving back, but not at first if you do just biochar. And I think, actually, Monica, I think that was probably a black eye for the biochar industry when it was first put out there. And, that they didn't realize that the blending is as important as the biochar itself.
I see. Okay. So if we bring this back then to a tree service company who is thinking, great, I work in urban areas, for example, I know the soils aren't very good. How would they go about using biochar as part of their services?
Their whole PHC program, right? Well, what they want to do, a lot of PHC programs have some kind of a nutrient, fertilizer, some kind of organic nutrient process that they're feeding their trees. This is only going to take that a whole nother level up. Generally speaking, when we talk to whether it's landscape, turf, or trees, we tell them if you're doing any kind of a fertilizer-like, nutrient-like process, you want to actually reduce that amount, because what happens, specifically with fertilizers, the volumes that they put in are assuming that fertilizer is going to work through the soil, and much of that fertilizer will never get to the plant. It'll leach away. Right. All those pores, Monica, it gathers it up, it holds it there. So you reduce a lot of your leaching, and therefore you don't have to put as much on. We've intentionally done our biochar blend in two ways. We have it granular, which is just the granular. It's like rough coffee, and you can blend it into the soil. You can just spread it along the top, and it can work through the soil. And we've also we've taken our biochar and milled it down into 5 micron size. And then with the granular, we put it with granular humate. And with the 5 micron size, we put it in liquid humate.
That was actually one of my questions, because it's not going to clog up. Say you're spraying it or you're using you're injecting it. It's not going to clog up the system by
not with our 5 micron sized. And we actually designed that for our agriculture so that it could be in their drip lines and things like that, so it wouldn't clog it up. Now that doesn't mean you don't have a whole bunch and then you leave it in your hose. You can have a build up that way kind of thing, but overall it should not be a problem, which is why we set it up those 2 different ways. From the homeowner's standpoint, and I guess from a tree service business as well, if you don't have to fertilize as often or with as much, where's the from a business standpoint, doesn't that mean that the company might be losing? We've had people discuss that. First of all, the fact that what you're doing is more effective for the plant, that doesn't mean you have to reduce how often you're out there and make smaller, make smaller applications. If that's the process, is your visits are part of how you charge the client. But if you start really increasing, if you get to a point where the amount of time that you're there and the amount of clients, and you have that's finite, you can only do so much, but you want to grow. This would also be in light of looking at that way. This would be a good way to be able to reduce the number of visits and increase your number of clientele. And I, how much people talk to their clients. I think it's a really great thing to come to your client and say, we have found a way to make our applications of this material more effective for you. Or maybe they don't change that and they just reduce the overall amounts and just do the timing as often as usual. But letting your client know you are part of helping with the climate change issues, because that's in the forefront of a lot of different people's minds. Okay. And maybe by that, and if you don't want to change anything on pricing or timing or anything like that, maybe just that additional charge saying you're getting the premium application because you're part of that carbon sequestration, that adding carbon to the soil. And by that, you're building more of the biology in the soil. And you and I were talking about that earlier, Monica, about how in reality, climate change isn't somehow finding a way to take the carbon out of the soil so much as preventing more carbon from getting into the air, into the atmosphere, and also creating more of a carbon base in the soils themselves. And
it's not just we take carbon, we stick it in the ground, and we leave it there forever, and we've taken it out of the atmosphere, and everything is wonderful. It's we've taken it out, and now we're using it in a way that is beneficial for plant life.
Exactly.
For bacteria, for fungi, all those things that are going to help your plants grow. So we're actually using it, not just hiding it, locking it away.
We're capturing that, putting it in the soil, and then we're enhancing through that soil structure. We're enhancing that biology creation. This whole idea of, like you said, grabbing it and throwing it in the ground and trying to capture it for hundreds of years, we can't, that's not sustainable anyway. Where are we going to, but creating that carbon and capturing that carbon, when you're producing more carbon, it is reducing the amount of carbon that gets released into the air.
So I assume there's research to support all of this use of biochar?
Just plug in biochar, Monica, and you'll get lots and lots of things online. There's a lot of work with all different kinds of things. Biochar tree, Bartlett tree even did a lot of studying with that as well. We've done a lot, some of it observational. Some of the observational tests that we saw were, for example, on Chinese chestnut in Missouri, we had extended growing periods, much longer than the other trees, the untreated trees. So it expanded the growing time, where it was still creating leaves and staying healthy instead of going into the hibernation, so to speak, that deciduous trees go through. We've done studying with biology. We have seen increases from 40%-ish all the way up to 90% of increased biology within the first season. Germination has been shown to increase with the seeds. That one's been a lot of different tests that mostly have been in something besides trees, but we can assume a germination with trees as well, because it's, again, the biology in the soil more than anything else. We did a really neat one where we tested blueberries, and blueberries, and I had to get this out so I would not be making any errors. We saw with blueberries for one season, just one season, comparing untreated to treated, we saw moisture content increase, total sugar increase, dietary fiber 33%, antioxidants 11% increase, and that was just after one season. It was a shortened season because we had done the test a little early, and we saw protein 125% increase. Tropicana did some citrus tests, and they found they were able to reduce the time to harvest So they were actually able by 25% reduce the amount of time and get harvest.
Sounds like, in a way, biochar is almost the wonder cure for everything to do with trees. So if people wanted to learn more about American biochar or biochar in general, where would you send them?
They can contact us through our website, www.ambiochar.com, or they can call our office directly, 269-663-2224. And they can also email us at info@ambiochar.com.
That sounds like something a lot of our listeners would be interested in. And I think across the entire tree service industry, it's something that not only would the businesses gain from, but also customers as they start to see healthier trees and appreciate them a little more. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that some of our listeners will get in touch with you and see how they
I hope so too. Thank you, Monica. It is very hard to give. Have you ever heard of those elevator speeches?
Yes.
Okay, tell me this in like 30 seconds. I'll just see you on the next floor. Homeowners like to see you out there. I get that,
Like
whether
you're
it's like
doing
I'm pretending I'm doing stuff or that you really are doing stuff. Approaching an arborist company and their PHC. Okay, sorry, PHC program. Okay, starting again.